episode 2 of Courtside Philosophy. I'm your host, Lonnie Smith. Excited to, get back into it, man. If you haven't checked out episode 1, please check that out. I talked about my predictions for the Eastern Conference in the NBA. In this episode, I'll talk about the Western Conference. So, for those of you who haven't listened to episode 1, a little bit of a tease. I actually don't have neither the Boston Celtics nor the Milwaukee Bucks winning the East. So, go check that one out and see who I picked to win the East. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the Western Conference. And so I posted my predictions on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it, at Courtside PhD for the handle. And so I'm going to talk about each of the teams in order. We're going to start from the bottom, work our way up. If you're new, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on either the Eastern Conference list or this list that I'm going to get into for the Western Conference. And for those who are new, you can see there's a Rockets symbol right in the middle there. That is putting my bias right in front of you on the screen. I am a Rockets fan. Ever since moving to Houston in 2002, I've been a fan of the team. And so we're obviously going to talk about them a little bit today in this pod. So I'll hold off and wait until we get to that point to discuss what I think of the team. But yeah, let's jump right into it, man. So in the West, in 15th, I do have the San Antonio Spurs as the team that finishes near the bottom, and this might already be incorrect. So we'll get into that in a second. But let me mention before I jump in, as in the previous video, I'll be referencing what's called Pythagorean wins. It's a metric that's on Basketball Reference that uses team points scored and opponent points scored as a way of predicting how many wins a team is expected to have, given that kind of a differential. It's a logarithmic regression model that does the calculation there. But it just gives you a sense, right, based on how many points your team scored versus how many they gave up, how good they were expected to be, right? And then we can compare that to how many wins they actually had to see if they underachieved or overachieved, right, relative to that metric. So I'll be referencing that throughout this video for all the teams, or if you're listening on Spotify. That's what I'll be referencing. So we'll start with San Antonio Spurs at 15. Last year they had 22 wins. Their Pythagorean wins was actually 19, so they kind of overachieved relative to that. Obviously, we won't bury it. The lead is Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs won the lottery. Again, when a generational big man is on the board. Again, I don't know how they keep doing it. David Robinson, Tim Duncan, now Victor Wembanyama. It just, as a fan of the Rockets, who are just essentially down the street, you just can't explain it. It's just tough. Obviously, I wanted Victor on the Rockets, but didn't happen. So he's with the Spurs. He obviously had a weird first preseason game. He didn't look very good, or in the summer league game, he didn't look great, right? But that was just the first one. But since then, he's done some things, man. He's just so different. His length is ridiculous. He's somehow blocking shots even though he's got a foot in the paint. I can't explain it. Dude is legitimately a unicorn, one of one, and he's going to be fun to watch, right? He loves to leak out and get some easy transition buckets, and then he actually likes to shoot a lot of threes, I think, pop, and then we'll probably try to dial that back a little bit. But the rest of the starting five for the Spurs, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, who got an extension this offseason, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, and Zach Collins, who also signed this offseason. I actually like that move for them. I think he's a really good piece next to Victor. They got a couple guys off the bench: Trey Jones, Dougie McBuckets, a.k.a. Doug McDermott, Devontae Graham, Chetty Osman, Malachi Branham. They have some guys, right? They're still young. They're gonna try to figure this thing out. Um, I say it might be a mistake because the team I had ahead of him already has an injury and is probably now going to finish in a worse position. And this is being recorded on October 28th, so I've seen a couple of the games. So these predictions were made before the games even started. Um, and so, but now I've watched a couple of the games and seen, all right, the Spurs they're 1-1. They competed. Pushed the Mavs. They beat my Rockets. We'll talk about that when I get to the Rockets. But yeah, they're gonna be a fun team to watch. They're gonna be young. We'll see how many games Victor plays. For the awards, right? The NBA changed the criteria where you need to play at least 65 games, but that does not include Rookie of the Year. So Victor could play like half the season and still be eligible to win the award. I think he's going to play, if I had to guess, like 50 something games, like 53, 4, or 5, somewhere in there, something like that. And he's obviously the favorite to win Rookie of the Year, rightfully so. He will probably, should lead the league in blocks just immediately. I stand on that. And we'll see what his defense, right, amounts to. Like, I don't know that there's ever been a rookie to make the defensive, like any All NBA, like defensive team or defensive first team or second team. I should say that could happen this year with Vic. He's that good. And if he's really that good, he could be in the DPOY conversation. Which would be something. So he's going to be very impactful on that side of the floor. Offensively, right, he's shown some flashes where he can knock down a three. He's got a handle, and he can get to the bucket. He's going to get bumped off the spot, right? He's not, built like that, but he's special, man. And unfortunately, he's going to be in my division for the foreseeable future. So that's unfortunate, but. I had him at 15. The Portland Trailblazers I had at 14, but that team might now actually be the team that ends up in last. As a note, I have some friends who are fans of the NBA as well and support other teams, and one of them is my guy Pradeep. He is a Portland Trailblazers fan, and he'll be on the pod. You'll see him occasionally as we go along this journey. So his perspective is really interesting on this team. They already lost a guy to an injury, so Anthony Simons has a torn, ligament in his thumb. His UCL is torn, and so he's out 4 to 6 weeks. So that's already a blow to this team. But they weren't really going to go anywhere anyways, so they did officially trade Damian Lillard. I talked about that to some extent in the previous episode, but he's no longer on the Trailblazers, and obviously even last year they weren't able to win with him, and they just sat him down for the last end of the season and just tanked the rest of the season, which helped them get the 3 pick and end up taking Scoot at 3. So we'll go through it. Last year they did win 33 games. They were predicted to only win 31. So they did a little bit better than advertised. But this year, right, their starting lineup will be Scoot Henderson, who they got with the number 3 pick. Simons, when he's healthy again, right, he's obviously out now. So Shaedon Sharpe is coming. He'll be in the starting lineup. Jeremy Grant, who they gave quite a bag to this offseason, he's there. And then they traded Yusuf Nurkic and Nasir Little and a couple other pieces to the Suns. And brought back DeAndre Ayton. So Ayton is at the 5. I think Tybal is now starting for them in place of Simons. All right, so he's in the rotation. We'll see what they do with Malcolm Brogdon. Right, he's a little bit older and doesn't fit their timeline. Right, they're trying to be young and they're going to be in the top 4 in terms of the picks for the lottery in the draft next season. So they may wait till the trade deadline to see what contenders are feeling like they're just missing that one point guard and then make a move with him for some draft picks or something like that. Apparently they were offered a deal involving Terrence Mann from the Clippers for Brogdon, but they turned that down, and it kind of makes sense because Terrence is 27 and he's still a little bit old for their timeline. So, but again, we'll see. We'll see what they do with Brogdon. They have Keegan Murray's brother, Chris Murray, and they got Time Lord in that deal with the Celtics that they got by shipping Drew to the Celtics. They come back with Brogdon and Time Lord, so he'll be in that center rotation too. They're gonna be bad, and that's just kind of it, right? I don't know what Chauncey Billups is as a head coach. We'll see this year if he's able to get something out of this, but he might be unfortunately out the door after this season. And then we got to keep an eye on Joe Cronin, the GM, and see what he's doing, or what his situation is going into next season. But yeah, Scoot is gonna be fun to watch. It's gonna be fun to watch him, figure things out in the NBA. Shaden Sharp, not afraid to shoot it. Um, Ayton, we got question marks on Ayton. Obviously he's built to play in the NBA. He's got talent. It almost is more of a question of does he have the desire to just really go after it like that on a consistent basis. So we will see. And then Jeremy Grant might be another guy that might be traded come the trade deadline to a contender. See what pieces they could get for him. But yeah, so they're not off to a good start. They already have an injury, and Vic is looking pretty good, and so they could easily finish last actually instead of the Spurs. But we'll see. We'll see. I had them at 14 before the season started. 13, Utah Jazz. So they won 37 games last year. They were predicted to win 39. They kind of fell apart there towards the end. Their starting five is THT, Taylor Horton Tucker, with Jordan Clarkson, Lauri Markkanen, who was the most improved player of the year last year. John Collins, who comes over from the Atlanta Hawks, right? They, traded him probably 2 years too late, but they did eventually trade him, and here he is with the Jazz. And then Walker Kessler, who's a nice young center. Obviously got the experience with Team USA in the FIBA World Cup. Colin Sexton, Ochai Ogbaji, Kelly Olynyk, Taylor Hendricks, who they drafted, Keontae George, they also drafted. They got some young guys. They kind of are incentivized to still be bad, which is why I had them down here at 13. Like, I think they have a draft pick at stake. Like, if they finish out, like, it's like top 10 protected, so they got to be, I think, somewhere in that range going into the draft to keep it. So if they're borderline, they probably will just go ahead and move in that direction. And I feel like they just kind of got off to a hot start last year. They kind of overachieved a little bit. So I don't think this team is going forward. I think maybe some people would say, yeah, they're going to be fighting for the play-in and that kind of thing. But I just don't see it. I think they honestly kind of take a step back this year. And yeah, I think they'll run some of the young guys, see what they have there. And then, yeah, I think come the trade deadline, we'll see where they're at, right? They're, I think, going to be incentivized to try to get a top pick, add some more talent to this roster, right? And then kind of see where they go from there, all right? Okay, now we get to my Houston Rockets, who I had at 12th, right? So we were only 22 wins last year, which I think put us, 14th? So almost dead last in the West. We were predicted to have 23 wins, so we were pretty much right on that. We did play a little bit better after the All-Star break. We've made some changes, right? New head coach Steven Silas is out. We bring in Ime Udoka as the new head coach, and we bring in Fred VanVleet. I signed him to some big money to lure him away from the Raptors and get him in there. And then we also gave some real big money to Dylan Brooks. I don't know if anybody else was really going to offer him what we offered him. It's like 4 years, $90 million. But we did it. I don't love that contract for Dylan Brooks, if I'm honest, but I do think he can bring at least some tenacity to the team. And then Jabari Smith and Alperen Şengün finish out the starting five. We got Amin Thompson, we drafted at 4, and then somehow we got Cam Whitmore at 20. He just kept falling, and we were like, absolutely, thank you so much for giving us Cam Whitmore at 20. We will take that. Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, and Jeff Green, some veteran leadership there, comes in. So I expect this team to be obviously better than last year for sure. I am not going to go crazy with the expectation and have them, like, I've got them 12th, but in terms of projecting wins, like, I still don't have them close to the play-in. Like, they're not ready for that. But I did expect a better start to the season. That I expected. I mean, to lose by 30 to Orlando to open things up is not good, and then to just flat out lose to the Spurs is doubly not good. We should have won that game. Jabari obviously missed 2 free throws there at the end. That would have put us up 4 with like 11 seconds left or something, and then we had the chance. Jabari missed the 3 that would have won the game. Go to OT, we lose, and yeah, he took it pretty hard in his post game. He just put it all on himself. He was like, everybody else showed up but me, so that's tough. He was taking that one pretty hard, but hopefully he can use that one as a learning experience. But ultimately, I already had this thought going into the season, and it's already been confirmed with the 2 games. This Şengün is the best player on this team. Like, he's so good. He's mini Jokic in aspects, and he's a leader on and off the floor, right? He had the moment on the court yesterday where he was just trying to get, Jabari back in it, talking about, hey, man, we're going to need you, keep your head up. He relayed that in his post-game interview, but he has a lot to his game that you got to love. The offense should run through him quite a bit, and other guys are going to have to play off of that. And then we get to Jalen Green, and it's his 3rd year in the association, and it's time. He's got to take the leap, right? He's got to show that he can be a contributor to winning. And all the offseason videos are nice, right, where he's, going out there 5-on-5s with KD and company and doing some good stuff there, but now it's got to translate into the NBA. And it's going to take a second, right? It's a new coach, right? We're learning some new things, some new sets we want to run. But he's got to improve as a shooter. Has to. There's no other way around it. Like, if he's able to be like a 38% three-point shooter to where you've got to respect him, then that'll just open up so much for his game. And he's got to add some facilitation to it as well. I know that's what he was working on. It's only been 2 games, of course. But we gotta keep moving in that direction. We'll see where we are come the All-Star break. I know that we have a top 4 protected pick that's set to go to, I believe, OKC. So there's a chance that if this team is, not as competitive as I thought they would be, that they might end up going the other way and trying to stay in the bottom 4 so they can keep that pick. I don't think we would use it. I think if we did keep it, it would be to trade with another team to bring a piece, because we are still trying to move in the positive direction. I think we have enough young guys on the team. We're actually trying to figure out which ones are the ones that we're going to keep. So I don't think we need to add another young guy to the mix. I think if we did end up in that situation, it would be to trade the pick to bring in another guy. But we'll see. I didn't mention Tari Eason. He's awesome, and we're currently missing him very much. He's so good defensively, and yeah, he is a valuable piece to this team, especially this season. So I hope he gets back soon so we can see what the team really looks like when he's out there. Excited to see him come back. Okay, 11, Dallas Mavericks. So Dallas is a team I'm concerned about. Right, they won 38 games last year. They should have won 41, but we know they tanked the last few because they wanted to keep that top 10 protected pick that they ended up using to flips and get Rashawn Holmes out of it. And they still got Derek Lively the second in the draft. But I have some concerns about this team. Obviously, I love Luka Doncic, and I think he's probably the best player in the NBA under 25 or 25 or under. But then you have Luka Doncic, Kyrie. They're actually, I think, starting Derrick Jones Jr. Over Hardaway right now. And then Grant Williams, who they got from the Celtics, they signed him in free agency. And then I mentioned Lively, he's starting at the 5. So you got a rookie starting at the 5. Offensively, I mean, Luka and Kyrie are going to have to carry quite a load, mainly Luka. And I just have real questions about him defensively. I don't love the personnel here. I mean, the rest of the rotation, Hardaway, Kleba, Rashawn Holmes, Josh Green, who just signed an extension. They bring back Seth Curry. They keep Dwight Powell. Dante Exum comes over from, I believe, Europe or somewhere where he was playing last season. Jaden Hardy, Omax Prosper, who they drafted. I'm concerned. Let's put it that way. I view this team as more of a 500 team, unless Luka just goes like nuclear every single night. Like I don't see how they make up for a poor defense with, I guess, consistent offensive output. Yeah, I have major concerns about them defensively. Right, Kyrie is a little bit on the smaller side. Luka has never been like the greatest defender, and you're going to rely on a rookie to, kind of pick things up in the center and be that last line of defense. Grant Williams is a plus defensively, and he can knock down a 3, so that helps. But the rest of the roster are more offensively tailored guys, so they're just going to have to outscore everybody, and that didn't work last year. Once they did get Kyrie, they actually had, I believe, a losing record with he and Luka in the lineup together. So I have my concerns. Some people have this team as like 4th or 5th in the West, and I just don't. I don't see it at the moment. But maybe I will. They did get off to a great start. They survived the Spurs, which my Rockets couldn't do. So there's that. And then Luka did some Luka magic stuff, 49 and a one-handed falling out of bounds bank 3 late in the game, so they could end up staving off the Nets minus Cam Johnson. I think they're gonna just hover more around 500 this season. That's me, and then we'll really see what's going on after that, if that were to happen, because then Luka might have some questions for the front office that would need to be answered. Okay, Oklahoma City. I've got them ahead of the Mavs. This team is really good. They're very young, right? So they won 40 games last year. 44 was their expectation, so they kind of underachieved just a little bit in that regard. Obviously, SGA is the guy, right? Now, some people are throwing him in the MVP conversation this year, and I'm not there yet. And if you follow ESPN, they actually put him in the top 10 as a top 10 player in the NBA. I'm also not there yet on that. He's done it for 1 season, so I got to see it again. I believe he can do it again, but I do need to see it. So I can't put him top 10 in the NBA, but I do think he's very, very good. It'd be great if he added more of a 3-ball to his game, right? Because then he'd be even more lethal. If he does that, then there's just nothing you can do offensively, and he's not the greatest defender, though, if we're honest. But you pair him, SGA, with Giddey, Lou Dort, J-Dub, I believe, right? Wing Jalen Williams, and then Chet Holmgren comes in, right? He obviously missed his rookie year with the foot injury, but he's back. He had 7 blocks last night, insane. He's going to have an impact defensively right away, which is a really good thing for them. Offensively, we got to figure things out, right? Between, Shea and Giddey and J-Dub, and then Chet getting some touches here. Obviously, you don't want Chet handling the ball too much. And then they also have some young talent on the bench, right? I mean, Bertans is young, but you got Bertans, you got Isaiah Joe, Ousmane Dieng, you got Jay Will, right? Big Jalen Williams. They bring in Micic from Europe, and then take Casey Wallace in the draft, and he looks like a nice young pick, a nice pick for them. I kind of feel like they're incentivized to just kind of explore what they have in their young talent this season. So I do see them on the upward trajectory. I just don't think they're gonna take the leap to like fourth in the or fifth in the West and like be in the playoffs. Like I still think they're gonna try to figure things out, play some guys minutes here and there to see what combinations work, what don't, and then they're obviously they're extra cautious with Shea. Like if he just has like a nick or just a little like bump, they label him as out. So he missed some games last year just because they were being overly cautious. So I could see them doing that again this year. Um, so yeah, they're going to be a good team, but and they're going to be fun to watch. But I do think they're more in like the play-in territory still going into the season. Okay, the Pelicans are really hard to project. Obvious reason is what are we going to get from Zion? Or are we going to get anything from Zion? Right? They won 42 games last year. Pythag says they should have had 46, so they underachieved. Their starting five: C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Trey Murphy. When he's healthy, he's currently out. He had a partial tear in his meniscus, so he had that surgically repaired. So he's trying to come back from that. So he'll be out for a little bit. But when he's back, he's in the starting lineup. So right now, it's probably Herb Jones that goes into the lineup with Zion and Jonas Valanciunas. I believe Jose Alvarado is out right now as well, but they have Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, Jordan Hawkins, who they drafted this summer. But this team is built on Zion, right? If he's healthy, we saw it, right? Last year when he was healthy and they were, early in the season, they were top number one seed in the West at one point, or right in the top three. But when he's off the court, they're not there. So how many games is he going to play? Right? I'm being optimistic and I'm hopeful that he plays 60 games this year. If he does that, or maybe even a little bit more, then this team absolutely should make the playoffs. They should be way better than ninth where I have them. But I'm baking in injury concerns into this, right? CJ has a history of injuries, and Brandon Ingram does too. The three of them have only played 172 minutes together or something crazy like that. So if they keep that core together and they can stay on the court, then this team should actually be the fifth seed in the West. But I just don't know that they're going to be able to do it. And then I do have concerns about Trey Murphy and his comeback from the injury. I think he's a really nice piece for them. All right, 6'9" wing who can knock down the three at 40%, play good defense. You don't find those guys just anywhere, right? So I might be a little low on them if Zion does play a ton of games this year, or a good amount of games this year. But then there's just a little bit of a question on the defense. Obviously, last year, if you look at the metrics, they were pretty good. But that was obviously with Zion off the court and Herb Jones on the court and Trey Murphy on the court, who are two good defenders. So I don't know if I believe those numbers fully. So can they be a good defense with Zion on the court? We'll see. Right? It's up to Willie Green to figure that out. So I currently have them ninth, but they definitely are a team that could be 5, 4, or I don't know about 4, but somewhere in there, somewhere in the playoff mix for sure. Sacramento, I've got them in the 8th spot. I have concerns. They won 48 games last year. They were predicted to win 47, so right on. Right? They have the exact same starting five as last year. De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, had re-signed Harrison Barnes. There was some talk that they might go after a Kyle Kuzma from Washington, or maybe bring in a Spicy P, Pascal Siakam from Toronto, but that didn't materialize, so they end up re-signing Harrison Barnes. Keegan Murray, who I like a lot, he's gonna be something. And I've already seen his game looks like he's taking a little bit of a step in the offseason. And then Sabonis at the 5, Malik Monk, Davion Mitchell. They bring in Chris Duarte from Indy, and they got Vezenkov. They come in with McGee as well, so they're fine. Right? So they were all offense pretty much last year, right? They scored a ton of points. They played really fast, but defensively they were terrible. It was, the defense was, in terms of efficiency or net or defensive rating, was akin to teams that finished in like the bottom five in the entire league. So to make the playoffs with that kind of a defense is, I think, rare, and then to be a top three seed with that kind of a defense might be even more rare. Um, but I just didn't see the step in the offseason. I was looking for them to maybe go after a spicy P, right, and see if they could get a little bit better at that position. I even think Kuzma might be a little bit of an upgrade there if they had gone after him, but they ultimately didn't do it. So they're just going to rely on growth from their core, right, and just expect this team to be a little bit better. But now teams have film on you. They see what you do. They know what you like to get to, right? So I'm sure they got guys who studied that in the off season to see, okay, this is how they like to play. And then the two main things are health and clutch play. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox won the first ever Jerry West Clutch Player of the Year award. Rightfully so. He was amazing in the clutch last season. Can you replicate that, though? I don't know, right? So they may have stolen like 4 or 5 games in the clutch last season. I don't know if that happens again this season. And then health, right? They were the healthiest team in the NBA. Their starting five was pretty much with them the entire season. Obviously, Sabonis had like a thumb thing, but he played through it. He's a tough guy, so he didn't miss any games. I don't know that that's replicable, right? I obviously don't wish any injuries on anybody, but if they were to have some injury to a guy in the starting lineup or a key rotation player for some amount of time, how do you deal with that, right? I haven't seen it, right? So I don't know. So I do think, especially the other consideration is the other teams in the West had tons of injuries, right? The Lakers, who we'll get to with Anthony Davis and LeBron. They both missed like 28 games last year. Obviously, the Clippers, they had Kawhi and PG both missed like 26, 27 games last year. The Warriors, Steph Curry missed like 24 games last season or something like that. So in a year where those teams had big injuries to their big star players, you only won 48. Only won 48 games. You finished third. I'm super happy for Sacramento that they made the playoffs and we got to see that atmosphere in the playoffs. That was awesome. They pushed the Warriors to Game 7. Yeah, I think they just take a little bit of a step back this year. They could be in the play-in. I currently have them 8th, which is part of the play-in, but I think they still make the playoffs this season. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Another team I have concerns about, Memphis. Obviously, you had concerns right off the bat with Ja, right? He's out for 25 games, so he's suspended for that. Obviously, with the things that happened off the court. But then you add to it the news that dropped like shortly before the season started. Steven Adams. They were trying to do some rehabilitative work on his knee and make sure the stability was there, but they were trying to do it in a non-operative manner, and it didn't work. So he's having the surgery, and he's out for the season already. So that's a huge blow. Obviously, he's not, you don't think of him as a scorer, but his ability to set like impactful screens just makes their offense that much better. And then he's a really good defender as well. So he will definitely be missed by this team. And that was on top of already being without Brandon Clark, right, who's coming back from a torn ACL. So it's already a tough hand that's been dealt to the Grizzlies. We'll go back last year. They won 51 games. They were predicted to win 51 games. So right on. When healthy, their starting lineup will be Morant, Desmond Bane. I assume Marcus Smart will get in the starting lineup. He comes over, obviously, in the trade that sent Porzingis to the Celtics. Tyus Jones then went from Memphis to Washington, and Marcus Smart comes from Boston here. And so he'll add his defensive tenacity to the team and some streaky three-point shooting. Triple J, Defensive Player of the Year at the 4, and now it's going to be Xavier Tillman who's going to come in at the 5 and get more minutes. So they're already thin on the rotation, right? Luke Kennard, I guess, will come in. He's a three-point shooter, but somewhat of a liability on defense. And then you probably, I think, plug in Zaire Williams right now for Morant in the starting 5. see what he's able to give you in terms of other bigger bodies that you could play at the 5 behind Tillman. I mean, big body David Roddy is going to get some minutes there. Maybe Kenny Lofton Jr. actually gets some minutes too. We'll see. And then Santi Aldama is actually out right now too, but he'll be back, so he'll get some minutes. David Laravia might get minutes here too. So it's going to be tough for the Grizzlies out of the gate. Getting Ja back will definitely help on the offensive end of the floor. And, well, yeah, on the offensive end of the floor. So there's going to have to be some good coaching here if they are able to get into the playoffs. So I have them 7th. If they do actually get in at 7 or 6, with everything that's happened with, certain guys like Steven Adams out, Brandon Clark missed most of the season, obviously Ja was suspended, you didn't have him, then Taylor Jenkins is in the conversation for Coach of the Year. If they do that, I think he would be in that conversation. I do think he's a good young head coach, and they should be a pretty good defensive team. I mean, you got 2 of the Defensive Player of the Years on the same team in the starting lineup in Marcus Smart and Triple J. So we'll see. They're feisty, right? They've got that grit and grind history and mentality, so they're just going to find a way to try to stay in it and keep a kind of afloat right around 500, and then get Ja back and see where they go from there, right? Okay, 6. The LA Clippers. 44 wins last year. 42 was their projection, so they just slightly overachieved that. You got Westbrook, Terrence Mann, who isn't playing right now, but typically would be in the starting lineup with Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Ivica Zubac. Norman Powell, Nicholas Batum, who said this is going to be his last season, so he'll be retiring after this year. Bones Highland, they get Kenyon Martin Jr. Off my Rockets in a trade over the summer. Rocco, Marcus Morris, those guys a little bit older now. Plumlee as a backup center. I'm putting him at 6 mainly because, one, I have a high belief in Ty Lue. I think he's in the conversation for best coach in the NBA with Eric Spoelstra, and you could throw some others in there, maybe like a Steve Kerr, right? But on my list, I think it might be he and Spoelstra at like 1 and 2 in the NBA in terms of best coach, or in some order, 1 or 2. But the roster's not bad. It's obviously health. That's it. That's the concern, right? Kawhi missing a ton of games, right? Paul George on top of that missing games. It's just tough, right? But when they are on the court, they're a good team. And we saw some of that in the playoffs. Obviously, Paul George was out, but Kawhi was in when they were taking on the Suns in round 1. And we saw it. Kawhi is insane. He's insane. He's a top 10 player in the NBA when he's healthy. I don't think you can deny him that. But he's just never healthy. That's the problem. But he was out there. He was ripping KD. Like, nobody rips KD. Like, KD's wingspan is like a mile long. And it's so hard to defend him because when he's going into a crossover, like, he's going like way out here and then coming with it way over here. So it's like a huge like yank. And there's so much wingspan to have to cover. But Kawhi with those giant paws just gets in there and he's ripping KD and going the other way for dunks and layups. So I hope he can stay healthy because I want to see what this Clippers team could be with a healthy Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Apparently they're going to take the regular season more seriously. That's what Ty Lue says. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But if they do, like, the roster is okay. Like, they're a little old, right? But we'll see. And then there's obviously a discussion about bringing in James Harden. Apparently they've made the Sixers have made them an offer saying we'll take a first round pick swap, and Terrence Mann, and you can have Harden. And the Clippers apparently said no to that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? I actually think Harden to the Bulls might end up being a thing, especially if the Bulls don't get off to a good start. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, this team, as presently constructed, is still, I think, pretty good. and I believe in Ty Lue and his versatility, right, as a head coach. So I got him at around similar number, like 45 wins or so, and sixth in the West. Just ahead of them, their current, I guess, building mates, roommates at Crypto.com Arena, um, the Los Angeles Lakers, just ahead of them. So this Lakers team won 43 games last year. They were projected to win 42, so pretty much right on. Their starting five this year will be D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, who obviously had a really good year last year, LeBron. I think they're going with Torian Prince at the four, or as the fifth man on this starting five, and then AD, who is an absolute monster and deserves a little bit more credit for what he brings to the table. I guess we'll talk about him in a second. Guys that are in the rotation, they bring in Gabe Vincent. They sign him to I think, 3-year, $33 million deal from Miami. Vando stays. He's just not available at the moment. They bring in Jackson Hayes from New Orleans. Rui Hachimura is going to come off the bench. I think Max Christie, I'd like to see him get a few more minutes and see what he looks like. Cam Reddish, and then Christian Wood comes over in the free agency as well. This team, obviously, it goes with health, just like the Clippers, right? AD and LeBron. I mentioned they missed like 28 games each or something like that last year. But, when those two are on the court, they're a formidable duo. Anthony Davis is so good defensively, and I think that's underappreciated to some extent. And all you have to do is go back and look at the Warriors series and just see how much trouble he caused them just by himself, by being on the court. Dude is awesome. Obviously, he's up and down offensively, right? But that's just, I think at this point, who he is, right? We just got to kind of just take it for what it is. Like, yeah, some nights he'll give you 30 and 12, like he did just the other night. And then some nights he'll maybe go missing for a half and miss a few shots, right? But he's always there defensively. That I got to give him credit for. Yeah, he's super good. I have him as a top 10 player in the NBA, right? I think we'll discuss that, Pradeep and I, in the next episode. So yeah, this team, it goes with LeBron, which is kind of sad because he's 39. He's almost 39 years old. He's damn near 40. He's still so good. They got to figure out a way to win the minutes when he's off the floor, right? It's already, again, a problem. Like, when he's off the court, they just don't win the plus minus. If they ever found a way to get close to just a net zero, right, in plus minus when he's off the floor, this team would be really good. But I don't know what they're going to be able to do just yet. They're probably going to have to run him at point a little bit more in certain situations. I'm sure they'll figure some things out. But this is a good team. They're a very good team. I think there's some balance to it. Like, you don't know who's going to be like the third guy. You kind of expect LeBron and AD to give you somewhere in the 25 range, like each. And then somebody else will be the third guy that night. That kind of will rotate between all of the guys on the bench. But I do expect this team to be better in the playoffs. I don't know that they'll be anywhere near like elite in the regular season. I think for them it's just a matter of get into the dance, right? Get in the playoffs. Ideally avoid the play-in so you don't have to play the extra game. And then just get us in a situation where we just have to play one team at a time, right? And they showed it last year by doing just that, right? They went on the road, they beat the Grizzlies, right? Then they beat the Golden State Warriors, and they obviously got swept in that Western Conference Finals by the Nuggets, but they were all really close games, really competitive. LeBron did everything he could in that last one, trying to sell out to get the win, but ultimately came out just a little bit short. But they're going to be, as usual, an interesting team to follow. If they stay healthy, mainly LeBron and AD, they'll be good. They'll be a good team. Here's a team that I'm putting a little bit more stock into this year, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've got them fourth in the West. That's my projection. Last year they won 42 games. They were predicted to win 41. So pretty much spot on. They bring back the exact same starting five. Mike Conley at the 1. Ant at the 2. He obviously had a good summer with the Team USA at the FIBA World Cup. He was the guy for the team, and he came through with some big time stuff. Obviously, we didn't win the gold, but he showed some things this summer. They signed Jaden McDaniels to an extension just recently in the offseason, so he's going to be in their starting five along with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Nas Reed also got an extension. They have Slow-Mo, Kyle Anderson. They bring in Shake Milton, and Alexander Walker's still there. Like, this is the personnel is good. And I do like their head coach, Chris Finch. And if they do finish fourth, like I'm predicting, or somewhere in this range, Chris Finch is definitely in the conversation for Coach of the Year. Like, they have to be all in, though, right? So when they signed Jaden McDaniels to that extension, I looked at their books. They already have $166 million on the books just between Edwards, McDaniels, Towns, Gobert, and Nas Reed for next season. And the salary cap is projected to be $172 million. So they're already almost over next year's salary cap, which is 5 guys on the roster. That's insane. That's a lot of money. So they really need to get off to a good start, because we got to figure out what this Towns-Gobert pairing is. In theory, it should work, right? With Gobert playing, obviously, inside and Cat being able to space the floor. He likes to play outside and shoot the 3-ball, right? You don't get many 7-foot dudes that can essentially play the 4 in the NBA. So, but it does have to be Anthony Edwards' team, right? We have to acknowledge it's his team. He's the one. He's the number 1 option on the team. Then Cat would be the 2, right? So hopefully that's been addressed by this team. They figured that out. Because on paper, man, they look like a good team, right? If Ant takes that leap, he's definitely got the dog in him for sure. And I do expect him to take that leap this season. Why can't they finish 4th, right? You got a dog in Anthony Edwards. You got a steady veteran point guard in Mike Conley. You got a 3-and-D, prototypical 3-and-D wing in Jaden McDaniels. You got a stretch 4 in Towns, and then Gobert as a guy that can grab boards and putbacks and as a lob threat around the basket, right? And then some decent guys off the bench, too. Nas Reed, right? Slow-Mo, he can come in. He's a veteran. He gives you some good minutes. And Alexander Walker showed me a little bit in the playoffs last year. They should be a team in this kind of in this part of the Western Conference, right? They should be in this conversation. If they do anything where they end up like back in the play-in like they were last year, then that's really underachieving. And if they're like somehow around 500 or so in the West by the trade deadline, then we could be seeing something where Karl Anthony Towns is on the block, and they look to move him, right? And then you question who those teams would be. Maybe the Knicks, maybe the Bulls, I don't know, something. Sixers probably in that mix too. But I'm gonna believe in the talent, and that they had an off season to kind of figure some things out. I think Chris Finch is a good coach, so I got him 4th in the West. Just above them, the Phoenix Suns. So they've obviously had a lot change for them this offseason. Last season, 45 wins. They were predicted to have 46. It's a totally different roster. So they bring in Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards. So he's in with Book. They keep Okogie in the starting lineup with Durant, who they traded for during last season. And then they bring in Nurkic as part of the deal that sent Ayton to Portland. And then they just kind of filled it out with long dudes on the bench, right? Eric Gordon's not one of them, but he's a guy who's a veteran who can come in, knock down a 3-ball, right, stretch the floor. But Keita Bates-Diop, Drew Eubanks is a backup center. Chimezi Metu has length. Yuta is a sniper from 3. Bol has length. They also got Nasir Little. Goodwin is getting some minutes right now. Obviously, again, health is the concern, right? Katie's missed some time over the prior seasons. Book has missed time. Beal has missed time, right? They've all missed a lot of time. And in fact, to start this year, Beal is already out with like lower back tightness or something like that. He's missed 2 games. Book played game 1, looked great, and then missed game 2 against the Lakers with, I believe, a toe injury or something like that. Durant had to carry it by himself, dropped 39, but they didn't get the win. So that's really it, right? Like if they stay healthy, I think this can work. Point Booker, I think, is fine. He actually averaged 7 assists playing point guard in the playoffs last year. So I think if they get their guys on the court healthy, they're going to be a good offense. I do have a concern that they're taking KD for granted. I wish they would really, like teams in general, like take KD for granted, even when he was with the Nets. Like obviously he can score because he's 7 foot and his spot where he's releasing the ball up in the air is so high you can't defend it. So he can shoot over anybody, but it would just be so nice if we ran some sets that actually got him like an open look. Because a lot of the shots he's taking right now are just like one-legged, off balance, like falling to the side, like twos, and it's like we couldn't get him a better look than that. Like, can we run some action and actually open up some space and have him like I don't know, come off a pin down and like go into an elbow jumper or something? Like, why do we have to just, hey, KD, bail us out? Like, do your thing, 1-on-1, boom, knock it down. Like, yeah, I hope Frank Vogel gets them into some of those kind of things offensively. Um, and then defensively, right, I do have the concern that Durant's probably your best defender on the court when you have your starting 5. I guess Okogie. But your rim protector is probably Durant, actually, coming over from the weak side. So they're a really interesting team. I couldn't put them like one because I know some people are fully bought in, but I have the injury concerns. Right, I got concerns that they'll be good on offense, I'm sure, but I don't want it to turn into, or hopefully it doesn't turn into your turn, my turn. Your turn between Beal and Durant and Booker. Hopefully they actually run some sets where they screen for each other, right, and do some stuff like that, get some cuts going. But if they are decent defensively, which they look like they are so far. Early in the season, and that's what Frank Vogel, right, hangs his hat on. Is he's a defensive-minded guy, so I appreciate the hire from that standpoint. But they do need to don't just rely on one-on-one basketball on the offensive end. That's all I'm saying. But they have a lot of talent, a lot of length. They'll win games, so I got them third in the West. Number 2, the Golden State Warriors. 44 wins last year. They were predicted to have 45, so pretty much spot on there. The 5. It's their typical starting 5. Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney. I'm anticipating Chris Paul coming off the bench once, Draymond comes back from his injury. Then they have Kuminga and Moody coming off the bench, along with Gary Payton the second, giving him some defense. Sarge gives him a little bit of size, and then maybe Corey Joseph will get some minutes here. But this is essentially a backing of the starting 5, right? I mentioned earlier Steph missed 25 games or something like that last year. Clay obviously didn't play well in that Lakers series, but he'll be hopefully a little bit better for them this year. And then they get a full year of Andrew Wiggins. Don't forget, he missed most of the season, right? He came back just shortly before the playoffs and then was in amazing shape and was able to contribute. But now they get a full season of Wiggs, right? Draymond, right? He's going to come back. Looney showed you a lot, at least me, in the playoffs, right? With his ability to just be awesome and stand tall at the 5. And then obviously, maybe the big addition by subtraction, Jordan Poole is no longer on the team. He's with the Wizards. So I think the camaraderie should go back to being a little bit normal, right? I think they were kind of stepping on eggshells with that whole Draymond Green, Jordan Poole situation throughout the whole season. You could see on the road, they did not play well. They were 11-30 on the road last season. Just couldn't find a way to win. I think the camaraderie will be much better this season. Now they are older, right? So there are injury concerns, right? Chris Paul has injury concerns. Steph, as mentioned, has some, and Draymond's already missing a couple games. Um, but I do think Chris being in a rotation role where he's more running the second unit will help him be on the court a little bit longer. He won't be playing as many minutes this year. He'll probably close games though for them, especially when they need shooting on the floor. And then I expect somewhat of a leap from Kuminga and Moody playing with Chris Paul. I think he'll help them, learn how to get to some spots on the floor that they like, get them some easy buckets with, some great assists, maybe play some lob game at the rim with one of them, something. Not expecting a ton from Peyton II. He doesn't affect the box score. Like, you won't find what he does in the box score, but just something about him just being out there playing good defense just helps this team, right? So I think they missed him a little bit, so they get him back. Sarge will give him some decent minutes, right, as another big. So, and then I think they're on a little bit of like we'll call it like a revenge tour, but not really. Obviously, nobody really believed in this team last year. A lot of people were picking the Kings to beat them in the first round, and then Steph drops 50 in Game 7 and lights the beam and all that, which is awesome. Not for the Kings, though. And then they got bullied in the second round by the Lakers. Anthony Davis was just a monster they couldn't deal with. So everybody's down on this team. I think this might be their last little run here, right? One more season, going all in with this core three of Curry, Thompson, and Green. Bring Chris Paul in, see if they can't make a run, right? Everybody's kind of like, I think they're done. I think it's over. I don't know that they're going to be able to do it. But I'm going to put them second in the West, and I say they're going to win quite a few games this year, and they'll be better than last year. All right, and that leaves us with number one, the Denver Nuggets. And I did flirt with not having them number one, but ultimately I just came back to I don't really think anybody else could quite overtake them. I mean, the Suns, if you could guarantee me that they were going to be healthy, then maybe I would put them up there. But I can't make that guarantee. So Denver, 53 wins last year. They were actually predicted to only win 49. And then they did take their foot off the gas there for a little bit because they had the West locked up. So they lost a couple games, including like one to my Rockets that they probably shouldn't have lost, and then kind of ramped it back up going into the playoffs. So by fact, they kind of overachieved last year. They did lose some guys, right? Bruce Brown's gone, so they still have the same starting five. Jamal Murray, who should probably make the All-Star team this year, or be labeled an All-Star this year. KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic, right? He's obviously the big one. And then they're going to have to get some good minutes out of Reggie Jackson and Christian Brown and Zeke Naji, who they signed to a deal this offseason. We'll see what they can get from others, like a Peyton Watson or a Julian Strother. And then DeAndre Jordan is just, he's still out there, man, getting these checks, bro. Hey, catching these lobs. I don't know what to tell you. He's still out there, man. Good for him. This is a bet on Jokic and Murray. Mainly Jokic. He's so good. He might average a triple-double this year, which is insane to think about. I mean, Russ already did it, but Russ is a point guard. This is a guy playing the 5 spot. I don't know what you want from Jokic. I mean, he just made the run. They win the finals. He was the MVP. I think he's in the conversation to win regular season MVP this year. I think voter fatigue kind of got in the way last year, and because he'd won it twice, but he hadn't won a title or made a deep run. So people were like, I don't know if we can make him a 3-time MVP if he doesn't really have that on his resume. And I can understand that, and I might agree with that. Just agree with that sentiment. So, but now I think he's definitely in play to win MVP. Does he want to win it? I don't know. He probably just wants to watch horse racing and, do his thing. But you just can't deny how good this team is with their starting 5. And then they just seem to find a way to get these rotation guys in place, right? So that was my main concern, was their bench play. And so far, they've been pretty good. Obviously, they beat the Lakers opening night, and then they held off Memphis last night. We'll see how much Christian Braun evolves, and then Reggie Jackson is somebody to keep an eye on to give some minutes. Julian Strother looks pretty good during their preseason play. He looks like he might be ready to contribute now, which would be quite a find for them. But yeah, this team is just really solid, right? Mike Malone, head coach. I think they are definitely in play to win the West again, with a similar number of wins. And then yeah, come the playoffs, they're gonna be a tough out, right? They're a really, really solid team, and yeah, I think as of right now, I got them projected to win the West. I just can't elevate any other team, mainly because of injury concerns with all of them, right? The Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Clippers. The team that probably would have been up there if healthy is Memphis, right? If you had a full season of Ja with Steven Adams, a full season of Steven Adams, then I probably would have leaned in and been like, yeah, Memphis is the team. Some people are probably going T-Wolves and going all in on them, but I'm like, they're going to be good, but I can't put them first in the West, so it's kind of a default answer there, but I do still think the Nuggets are very good, and they reminded everybody of that on opening night. But yes, there you go. That is the Western Conference. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. If you like the video, drop a like, subscribe. That would be awesome. I think next time it'll be my guy Pradeep and I. We'll be talking about top players in the NBA. We're debuting a segment that'll be recurring on the channel. We're calling it the Supreme Court. All right, so top 9 guys in the NBA going into the season, and that'll be updated each month to kind of be the top 9 of the month kind of a thing. So that'll be fun. That'll be exciting. But yeah, thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace.